remember before I was 14, Abby had left the village, and I joined the meeting, and I got into the close brethren. My folk was all very much brethren and Christian upbringing, and I joined the brethren when I was just about 13 years old. Me was a word of Loustic, and I was still to school, and there were just 10 or 12 lads left to carry on the meeting. So Monday night, after a prayer meeting, they said to me, "Now, John, there's nobody to preach this weekend. What about you preaching this weekend?" I said, "I can't preach. I'm only 14-year-old yet." "Oh, but there's nobody else to eat, and if you just took it down, there would never nobody here, hardly, and that would be fine." Well, this is all tried anyway. So it was okay. I was to preach on the Sunday. But before the Sunday come round about, the fleet was here for Loustic, and I still had to preach. I was only 14. I'm preaching the full Hall of Folk on Sunday night when I was only 14-year-old. Never forget, I spoke for about an hour and 10 minutes. And the subject, "Choose ye this day whom you will serve." That's the first time I'd ever preached the gospel. I've preached a lot of times since then in different situations, but that's the first my experience. Anyway, it was a happy situation. Brethren were recognised worldwide. I think the concept of the Brethren movement was a very wonderful movement. They started away back in the early, I suppose, the late 18th century, late 19th century and the early 20th century. And it was a very honourable and commendable movement. Very much used for the spiritual bringing in the uplifts a tremendous amount of people. But unfortunately, times changes, and it was like the mustard tree. It started to flourish, and there were different branches got up with them. I was born in this situation anyway.
The Fisherfolk as a whole were a religious folk.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
They've all their belief, you can.
Right.
Some deeper than others.
Right.
And some, would overdo the religion side. Because, here's brothers, maybe one a strong believer, the other maybe took a pint, and they came to be didn't see eye to eye, and they would have sat down at the same table. On the sea, when you was on your own, you had a big expanse of water and nothing to see. Naturally, you thought about nature. Well, when you start to think about nature, when you look it up and you see them bonny blue skies, religion come into you. Whether you like it or no. You see, when you shut the nets, maybe say 9, 10 o'clock at night, you got a cup of tea, and maybe when your turn to keep a watch. It had to be somebody in watch. Now, it could have been your turn to keep watch. You was on the one travelling round about the boat in your own. I ran to wheelhouse and said, something had a smoke. But all the way around about you was water. Not as clear, sometimes not even seabirds. Well, your thoughts wandered. You just look at the sea, if it far near, but all this water here. You look it up a beanie, a sky a beanie, a bonny blue sky. Now, would there be folk up here? Would there be humans up a beanies? Naturally, your thoughts turned all kind of ways. But it wasn't for danger. It was just wondering and curiosity. Because when you was brought up at the sea, you never thought in danger. Even when you was catching a storm, you didn't think in danger. You trusted your boat, you trusted your crew. And you can't, you're going to mark the land. And that was about it. he was quite happy. She didn't care anything else but to be happy, you see. It was your work, it was your job, it was your neighbours, it was your pals. And you just made the best of them.
I did discuss, was this a sort of a thing that was discussed in the boats, what you have said?
Well, at times, no. We've been, say, away from home. And you've been sitting in a weekend in a bunchy in a cabin, maybe with bad weather, rain, no work. In fact, you never had very much money to go ashore. If you got your paper on the weekend or your cigarettes or anything like that, you couldn't afford much there. Well, when you were sitting in a cabin, sometimes you'd have a game of crib. You'd have used to when your sails were crib. Naturally, religion come into your view as well. You see, you can't, when you're in a company of the cut, you can't avoid that kind of things. It just, the news gradually work it round town. Somebody that maybe got in word for him, the minister's no wheel. Well, that's set you going, set them going, you see. They'd have spoken about religion that way. You know, there have been brethren that have been sitting with their Bibles open and their tracts before them. Ian discussed looking for a different way reading a script that was there. To get a different meaning out of it their neighbours did. It all ended in the same thing.
So did they keep Bibles aboard the boat as
Oh,
well?
aye, they all had their Bibles. Oh, aye.
They kept their Bible.
Oh, you wouldn't have been away from him without that. They were only more religion than everybody, but it was something that belonged to you.
A way of life.
A way of life. And if you could help it in another, well, you advise in another, you help it in another, you share it with another.
Deze mannen, die Alse koopvolks, they were all kerk or free kerk. There was no such a thing as brethren or Baptist or congregational or nothing, they were just kerk. That was about it. Now, and in reality, there was kerk and all, but there was all kind of different religions, there was Mormons and brethren and all kind of different meetings. There was never in zo'n komst. There was just kerk and there was nothing else about it. And they used to say, well, you can cast and come as man, you can cast his wife or anything you like, and you can cast his family, but you do not cast his kerk or his boat. En ik zei, dat vind ik dat. The temperance walk was in Valgee. Dat kan ik hier eigenlijk did. I think it must have been about the 1840s, 30s or 40s. And apparently, for the kilometers and comes, and we'll get a bad. I get to get that. So comes folk was what in the hand with it. They had to go with drum. They were what in the with us. So apparently, for I wouldn't learn to believe it, in the Valley folk, the man leading the walk, he was got a sword to carry in front and to use if he was obstructed in any way. But of course, gradually I think it was a laird. Later, it gave him a sword and tell him permission to use a sword if he was obstructed in any way. But apparently now, in 2 or 3 years, it comes and fun into the temperance movement, and I suppose it's seen the era otherwise, like. So, but my grandfather, speaking of Mr. Combs' grandfather, his father was reputed. There used to be 12 pubs in St. Combs at that time. And my grandfather's father was supposed to try to get down the lum to the pub, and he stuck halfway, well, he didn't stuck halfway down, he stuck if we call the crook in the sway. That's a air that used to be built into a fireside, and the sway came out and then like that, where a crook was a chain, links a chain and a hook at the end of it, you see. You hung a pot on till, and you could take a links up, the chain up and raise the pot up and lower down, and this sway came back over the fireside. So if you wanted to take a pot off a fire, you just moved the sway off and you just clear the fire. But he tried doing along accordingly, and he's supposed to have stuck on a crook. So that must have been a while back. And in the 1860s, 1850s, 60s, when he was got stuck in a lung. So there hadn't been a temperance then. But that was about the time, I would say, for the temperance movement started, Jensen goes. And by that time, I would say, in all he get involved with the cause, had become, like all the rest of the fishing villages, strictly TT.
Certainly,
Most of
the women folk in the Barons had quite a hard time with it. They threw drinking at the time.
Oh, right. I mean, there was no money rented then. They were just drinking nothing. I mean, they were going out and catching fish, you'd come in and give the fish to the pub man for a jar of porter. The wife wasn't getting nothing.
So they were starving, really.
They were actually starving, there's no question about it. They were actually starving. Drink was just the rolling factor. It was fishing for drink. And I suppose it's for the women who put the clamps down on them, that was it. I said, well, boys, well, trying to do something. So the women had really clamped down on it. That was the finish of that. If you get the drink, you'll get the grub and you'll get the hangers. So they had to change their ways quick. But I suppose it was for the better, like, you know.
Well, of course, it's been the war back in the, that time of day, I was been about the 1900s or before, and round about that time there were quite a few religious revivals. I was in, I can tell you about one, jock troop. Most of the Fisherfolk have heard a jock troop. He was a cooper, and he was working for a herring cure down in Yarmouth. That was in 1921, and he was a member of Salvation Army. He started preaching in Yarmouth, Yarmouth he was, in his spare time, of course. He worked all day at the herring business, but in his off time at night he'd have been preaching. And there was a revival, a religious revival started there at that time. Now, there was a minister in Lowestoft, Douglas Brown, at the same time, at the East Anglian Herring season, autumn of 1921. Douglas Brown, he was a Baptist minister in Lowestoft, and he was preaching, and the same thing happened with him. There's hundreds got converted under his preaching. And then up in Norwich, that's inland for Yarmouth, there was a company of Salvation Army officers being trained, a busload of them, a Charaban Crusade they called it. Now, one of that lads, William Leeds, he was one of the officers that was there at that time. He eventually reached Portsoy as an army officer. It was him that told me about the Norwich bit. They were inland in Norwich, and they were preaching around about the villages in East Anglia, and there was quite a few folk converted under their preaching. So there was a great revival started off, a religious revival started off in 1921 down in East Anglia at that time. Now every kirk of meeting place would have been jammed full there at that time. I was in Yarmouth or Lowstoff at that time, but when the Fisherfolks come home, you see, they come home to their various towns and hamlets, and so the religious business spread, you see. The revival spread to Scotland, and most of the towns and villages felt the power of this revival. Now, it eventually reached Portsoy in 1923, twice. Now, when I get to Kirk, I kent that there was something that I was not getting. I knew that there was something that lacking with the Kirk business. There was the sermons and the singing, but it seemed there was so much formality and ceremony about it that I felt that there was something lacking there, you see. Now, I had a pal, James George Peary, him and I were pals, and him and I were in the same mind, you see. We both get the kirk together, but we realised, both of us realised that there was something there, it was lacking. Now, you see, whenever I heard this Salvation Army boy preaching the gospel, that we are sinners and needed to be saved, I realised then, and I'm convinced it was under the leading and the power of the Holy Spirit, that this was what I had been looking for and I could not get. See? Now, I pushed my way into the ring there at that time. There was a place was parked, but I pushed my way into the ring there at that time. And as I knelt in the roadway, the Albert Downs, the officer who was in charge here, he told me what was required, that I was a sinner and I needed to be saved. And the Lord Jesus had died for me. And I realised that that was my position. And I'm sure that I was saved at that time. And I look back on it now and I'm convinced now, more than ever, that this was God's leading and guiding. And I'm saved for time and for eternity.
Another thing, you see, it has been proved that folk are more sincere as far as religious being religious concerned is in days of poverty, you know, prosperity. It doesn't help it. See, folk become less dependent on God, you know, when they think of men sufficient means of themselves to carry them through.
So you think that poverty has something to do with it as well? Like
Well, maybe it has, and maybe they're calling, you know, they're facing a lot of danger, you know, fishermen. I mean, in the sailboats time there was a lot of men lost, a lot of boats lost, and in the sailboats time, because they were at the mercy of the wind and the wave, you see, and a lot of them was lost time to time, you know.
So the mingling between the hardships, between braving storms and the hardships at home and the poverty, you think, brought into this realisation?
Well, I could, yeah.